you've been a Baha'i for some years now.
58 years.
58 years. What inspired you to become a Baha'i? What made you make that decision in your life?
The confirmation that I received was to sense the effects of the Baha'i Faith. Back when I was a 13-year-old in 1948, my father had studied the Baha'i Faith for over 20 years trying to disprove it, and ultimately came to the conclusion that he was the one that was wrong, not the Baha'i Faith. And so he decided to take the family to Greenacre, which is located in the southern tip of the state of Maine. That experience was a transforming effect. It had a transforming effect on me. I would say that in no more than an hour of being on that campus, it was different. It was so different and so refreshing. I think, not to sound schmaltzy, but I think we all felt the loving embrace of a truly spiritual community. And so in my heart of hearts, I was confirmed that it was right.
What impact has the Baha'i Faith and the Baha'i message had on your life?
I don't think I would be here right now. I don't even know if I would be alive, quite honestly, if it weren't for Baha'i Faith. When I was 13 years old, life was relatively simple compared to what's going on in the world today. We weren't in constant fear of terrorist activities. We weren't knowledgeable enough to know what effects abuse of the natural environment were making. Here we were hearing about this new religion who has the most extraordinary goal of any. I don't think there's any group on this planet that has a more ambitious, a more optimistic, a more upbeat, and a more wholesome goal, and that is the spiritualization of the planet, and to actually carry forward an ever-advancing civilization and provide for the transformation, the spiritual transformation of all of its inhabitants. Each experience, each new thing that was learned was a further confirmation of what I had already felt during that first visit to Greenacre. We've had these critical periods before in the history of mankind, and with each of those crises that humanity has gone through as a whole, there's been a spiritual renaissance that has taken place, at the base of which is the reappearance of the Christ Spirit, bearing different names, but in essence the same Spirit, that the Christ Spirit always was and always will be. That's what Alpha and Omega really means, as spoken of in the Bible, that the Christ Spirit has been manifest from age to age. Same Spirit, different place on the horizon, different location, different personage, but essentially the same spiritual reality. And therefore religion is one. Mankind is one, God is one, religion is one. With the advent of Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith, that Christ Spirit that has appeared a little over 160 years ago is now addressing the needs of the entire world, and to unite all of humankind, all the nations, well, like the prophecies in the Bible, that the time would come when all the nations, tribes, and religions would be united as one. We're there. That has happened. It took place in the point of the last century, and within less than 170 years, that new Christ Spirit has been shared and exists in communities all over this globe, and incrementally the world is feeling its effects, and ultimately It will be the pattern for the redemption of all of mankind.
Now, what do you think that the Baha'i Faith can contribute to the field of education? What things can it contribute?
There's only one broader scheme of thought that I know of than quite its cosmology, and that is the revelation of Baha'u'llah. And in those writings, he describes our purpose, and he describes in detail our nature. To be able to use as a beginning place that perspective on what our nature is invaluable.
What are some of the successes and achievements of the Baha'i community, just relative to its young age and small size? It has been able to accomplish a lot. Share your perspective on it.
Baha'u'llah is reputed to have written over 100 books himself. And then his son, who was appointed center of the covenant by Baha'u'llah to take over after his death, wrote more, and then that Abdu'l-Bahá, and then Abdu'l-Bahā's grandson was appointed the first guardian, all of whom were endowed with the capacity to write authoritatively and to interpret. Religion in the past has divided, and I think it's safe to say that those divisions largely have come about as a result of confusion over legitimate authority and right of interpretation. So I would say that the most outstanding contribution or achievement is that in these almost 170 years, Baha'i Faith remains united. And there's the promise of the forerunner that division will never take place. And also, for the first time in recorded history, we have a religion whose founder was the architect of the actual administrative structure that should be created, through which the affairs of that faith community now can operate with clarity and with direction. But in the early days, becoming a Baha'i statistically was tantamount to 40 to 50% of those who declared their belief being martyred. The soil of this new world order has been saturated with the blood of martyrs who were willing to give up their lives willingly for this new cause that eventually would transform the whole of mankind. So there's that. And then there's the extraordinary growth. You know, it took Christianity, of course, technology was far more primitive then. I mean, it's not to criticize, but just to merely make an observation. It took Christianity 18 centuries to be considered to have spread throughout the world through the act of pioneering. That's giving up your home and throwing caution to the wind and going into a territory, in many cases, totally unknown to the one going in. The Baha'is have courageously spread this message all over the planet. And so here we have a little over 5 million members in communities ranging from just a handful to thousands.
What do you think the Baha'is have to do from here to maintain or excel those great accomplishments?
Well, the number one job for the Baha'is, individually and collectively, is to demonstrate in their own lives the power of transformation. I wish I had that quote with me
From The Guardian?
From The Guardian, yes. That says that the one thing and the only thing that will prove to a skeptical and cynical world the transforming effects of this stupendous revelation is the extent to which we mirror forth in our personal conduct and public lives and the powerful message of Baha'u'llah. That's poorly paraphrased. I wish I had the quote, because the quote is matchless in its prose. When that happens, there is manifest both individually and collectively a spirit that's so compelling and so convincing that there will reach a time, once we reach that, there will come a time when people will merely flock to find out how that was possible.
The Bahá'í Faith also has developed a form of education system. It's in its infancy. There's a lot more that will be done, but it seems its primary focus is the development of skills and resource building, and the Baha'is call that the institute process. Now, what do you think is the role of the institute process in developing distinctive Baha'i communities and a distinctive Baha'i culture?
Well, here you have to have a fusion between spirit and form. One without the other is inadequate. We have matured to the point and grown in number where this had to be made much more systematic. And therefore the ultimate governing institution of the Baha'i Faith, the Universal House of Justice, has decided that the time had come to systematically structure the beginnings of the infrastructure that initially will govern the Baha'i community and that eventually will grow into that infrastructure that will replace or help transform the existing elements in the infrastructure of the world. And so rather than having a spirit or form controversy, our pursuit is how to take the forms that are legitimately being created and fuse with those forms the spirit that derives from an understanding of the revelation in such a way that the community can be attended to and governed appropriately and its growth managed properly. The beginning semblances of that include study circles for all of its members, special classes for youth, special classes for children, and devotionals. And we can look forward to that basic structure once it's fully established. At the same time, there are other aspects of the infrastructure that have emerged that are supplemental to those basic elements. For example, at this point, anyone who aspires to a scholarly mastery of the Baha'i writings must also do a lot of study on his or her own, must take advantage of offerings at the summer schools and at conferences.